Oh, it's that time again. We got a new weapon. Let's talk about it. Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about the new 13-star series weapon that we had released with the Vile 4-man, and just how strong it is, how its potential works, and how it might be the most busted weapon we have had thus far. But before we jump to that, if you're new here, as always, I'm Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate it. Subscribe as we work towards our brand new goal of 15,000 subscribers on the channel. You guys crushed that 10K goal. Thank you to all of you guys who jumped in with Crystal of Atlan. We still have plenty of games to cover, so we will still continue covering those games as time moves forward. And if you're watching one of those Crystal of Atlan guys, don't worry, there's still more Crystal of Atlan videos to make. I will be making those over the course of the next couple of days, and we'll be doing our best to cover as much content as we possibly can. But it's time for a little PSO2, so kick back, relax, and enjoy the information. You might enjoy this one. So if you never watched one of these, we usually tend to like to start out by going over the weapon's potential and what I think of it and its synergies, so on and so forth. We're doing this over on the Arks-Visiphone website, so PSO2NGS.arks-visiphone.com, and you can just scroll on down and they have a section right here that just says weapon series. So you can find this information yourself. You don't have to wait for me to make a video about it. Totally understandable if you don't want to, but if you don't like to, deal with that stuff yourself, then hey, the video is here for a reason. I'm going to pop over here and we can see the entire list of weapons and their potentials as well as where they drop from. So pretty cool stuff here. We were previously using another wiki, but unfortunately it doesn't look like it is available anymore. So it's not being kept up. It is what it is, not too big a deal. But as you can see right down here, if we go all the way to the bottom to our first 13-star, the Cres. The Cres, you can see, already has a massive amount of base power. So you can see it already kind of crushes the Akroselio by a good amount when it's fully upgraded with the base power amount. So pretty solid stuff here. This is level 90, of course. This is, I believe, level 100 on the upgrades. I'm not sure if they've updated it. Yeah, max 100. Okay, so yeah, we do have the max 100 upgrades for the update itself, and it requires level 90 to equip. So pretty solid stuff there. So the first point of contention is the actual potential shining unit. So I would have loved for this to actually be listed here, but it looks like it's not. So time to pivot. Time to adapt. Yes, thank you players for always upgrading potentials before you start to sell something, as if to make it more appealing for the person trying to sell it. Anyway, you can grab the potential from right here. So Shining Unit 6, so it is 52% potency, potency plus 3%, and PP consumption minus 15% effect activates when you hit an enemy. Effect ends when you take 20% of your max HP as damage. This is on a 60-second cooldown, and dealing 500,000 damage during the cooldown resets the cooldown. So we've done a little bit of testing for this, and we have a better understanding of how this potential actually works. So first things first, this potential activates off rip. So as soon as you hit an enemy, it's active, like just immediately. It's not before you hit something. It's not like while you're waiting. It is this, the second an attack connects with the enemy, the potential is active and you are good to go. Now in our testing, it seems like it affects the very first hit. If you're concerned, maybe throw out a normal or something like that, just to assume that the potential is absolutely active, and then you're good to go. Kind of similar to the old 15 stars from base PSO2, where you had to throw off 3 normals to activate the potential. You just toss out a normal, and then you were 100% absolutely in the positive. But in the testing that we went through, granted, it was a bit limited. I don't have a Cres personally, so got to work with a bit of word of mouth and see how people do things. Just know that the potential is active right then and there. And here's the funny part. So we were concerned about this potential because of the effect ending after taking 20% of damage. Now, the wording in this is actually, again, very important. PSO2 does this thing where the wording is very, very specific. So effect ends when you take 20% of max HP damage. This isn't effect ends when you have taken up to 20% of your HP as damage, meaning smaller hits that aren't 20% of your HP actually will not remove the effect of this potential. So while we thought things like maintain balance, shortage HP, and hysterical strength, PP burn were not going to work, they actually do. This potential is made with those in mind. As long as you don't take 20% of your health in a single hit as damage, you're actually completely fine. And the funny part is that this is actually even better for setups like shortage HP and maintain balance, because maintain balance puts you in a state where you have a massive chunk of damage resistance, meaning that you are even less likely to take 20% of your max HP as damage, since you've got a huge chunk of damage resistance. So this actually works with those EX augments. Where we thought they weren't going to work, it actually doesn't disable them. Now, you have to keep in mind, taking a hit does remove this effect, and you have to deal up to 500,000 damage to get the cooldown to reset. I'm gonna be honest, in current year, we're dealing over 500,000 damage within 60 seconds. Like, that's not a problem. I could pinion for nearly that much damage depending upon the down and the situation itself and the classes that we have. So you will definitely be able to get this potential rolling fairly quickly. Now, the only time I can foresee this being an issue is if you're in the middle of like a phase where the boss is like off the screen and like he's flying across and you take a big hit or something like that and it knocks the potential off. That kind of sucks. But you'll be in a situation usually when those cases happen where the boss might be off the screen for upwards of 60 seconds. So that would be great for it to work that way. I'm not 100% sure if that'll be the case in that situation, but as far as how this potential work, it actually doesn't work against you with any of the EX augment combinations. And the only time that you would really be worried is honestly if you just don't have any damage reduction. This actually plays fairly well into builds that tend to be fairly tanky. If you're not usually taking anywhere near 20% damage from a single hit, then you'll always have this potential active and running. It doesn't ever go away unless you take that hit. And then of course, if you do take the hit, then you just got to reactivate it. So super awesome and massive chunk of potency. Just for comparison's sake, this is 52%, man. Even if this 3% wasn't active, look at our Akroselios. Our current best in slot weapon, or the best in slot weapon we had beforehand, was 46%, and that was considered pretty high. 46% was fairly high, and as you can see, there's no extra damage bonuses. The Cres is 52 off rip, and on top of that, getting an extra 3%, assuming you have the potential active, which we just went over, is not that difficult to keep active as long as you're not just getting absolutely blasted every 5 seconds. So now that we know what the weapon does, let's take a look at the actual calculations. I will warn, to get flashbanged, we are going to be looking at a damage calculator that's going to be in a spreadsheet, so you've been warned. All right, so we are on Cakewalk's damage calculator in case you're curious and you want to go through this yourself. This link will be left in the video description. You always just hold on to this link. Whenever it gets updated, you can go to this link specifically. It'll be the updated version, and then just go and click on File and hit Make a Copy for your version. That way you can go ahead and edit and change what you need to change. I've made multiple videos of talking about this. I've made videos explaining how it works. Cake also streams and talks about this. If you guys have any questions, updates for whatever's going on are listed right here, so you can keep up with everything when it comes to this damage calculator. You don't need me for this, but I am here available to help you guys out if you ever need to go through this. So this literally just updated today, by the way. It was some other calculations that actually changed and updated, but other stuff was updated earlier. So usually he's pretty quick about doing this unless there's something else going on. So it's cool of Cake to let us use this sort of stuff, and I've talked with him multiple times. So pretty cool stuff here. So in case you're curious of what our comparison is going to be, here's what we're working with as far as skills are concerned. We are working with a base Arkoselio with attack 5. We have these augments on the weapon themselves, and this is basically best in slot. Like, this is the strongest you can be currently in the game. The only difference being that you would be on Wix 5 instead of attack 5. And as far as fixes, I know some people are going to ask, like, what fix is good? What fix is bad now? They changed the fixes. What's the power scaling looking like for fixes? Essentially, Wix and unwix are king at the moment. Wix being the strongest, and unwix on any situation that you're not able to actually get your weak spot damage on consistently. So Wix on Wix absolutely killing it. A ban deck unfortunately has now become weaker than Wix, which I think is absolutely silly. But depending upon your class and your situation, a ban deck could still be actually fairly beneficial. And there are some classes that just flat out not going to be hitting weak points, and you're also not going to be using the proper element, depending upon if you're using text. So you also have that going on for you. But as far as the game is balanced currently, Wix on Wix is absolute king, and it's going to be the case in 95% of content, if not 98% of content. But the only downside is you have to have a second weapon. If you're not really, rolling with that, I mean, you could probably still get away with just running Wix, to be perfectly honest. Given the new 4-man is just a giant weak spot all the time, even when his weak spot's showing and you're not hitting his weak spot, you're still hitting a weak spot, which is kind of insane to me. But it's one of the situations where you'll mostly have access to it at all times. So if you really, really, really are concerned and you're like, I don't really, I don't want to take that chance. I want to make sure I'm always doing the multiple damage I can be doing. Attack is still very good. Blaster is still very good. I think attack actually might come up as like one of the third best at this point. It should be technically unwix on a target that it actually activates on, wix as long as you're hitting a weak spot, a bandak, and then right afterwards you're looking at, I believe it's attack then blaster, I want to say. It's a toss up between those two depending upon your class and your setup. And then bringing up the rear as always is going to be Fatale. If you're like, what about Termina? Termina is for Slayers. They buffed it. It's even better now for Slayers. There you go. For everyone else, it's if you want to have an extra weapon to fish for crits. That's basically your weapon you go for on downs. That's about it. So enough talk about fixes. Let's talk about the actual weapon. So you see these are the armor that we're going for pretty much across the board. What's up with this weapon? So I'm gonna slide over here and take a look at this. So here's our baseline of Arks-Visiphone at Fixa Attack 5, but realistically, any of the actual like Fixas, you can go with anything, realistically speaking, right? Like even Fatale does kind of take over in the situation where you specifically set up for it, but yeah, I mean, the build for Fatale technically, I believe, ends up being a little bit weaker anyway, so it's not even worth mentioning as far as the setup goes. Basically, it's you go all potency and you pray to God that you crit as much as possible using Fatale. Yeah, it's a very silly setup, but you can see we've got a lot of different weapon combination setting here. If you're someone who's still using your free weapon, just know that it is 35% weaker than an Akroselio at its best case scenario. So what about the Cres weapon? Well, there's 4 different denominations for Cres. There is full uptime, there's 75% uptime, there's 50% uptime, and emotional damage, where you basically just get no uptime at all. Like you're always getting hit, you basically don't have the buff up. I think it's like less 25%, I want to say. And then we have the different individual weapons. So as you can see, if we take a look at uptime wise, even in the emotional damage state, the difference in damage is crazy even from the freaking emotional damage version. This is like when you're not keeping your buff up consistently. It is still over 5% stronger. It is 6.1% stronger than the Akroselio, than what we were using for a while now. And as you just play better, it gets better. And as you guys know, percentages in PSO2 are crazy. With percentages, things tend to scale out of control because everything is basically multiplicative in PSO2. So even the smallest of percentages can seem small and be way bigger than they actually look. So when you're looking at something like Legendios, which didn't really see much of a difference in damage versus Akroselio, that is not the same for the Cres weapon. It is massively stronger. So if you were in a run with a friend and they're like, I'm rocking a Cres and you're rocking an Akroselio, and they're like, I'm doing 70,000 damage, and you're like, bro, I can barely break 55k. Like, there's a reason. There's a reason. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the situation that you're going to be dealing with, but like Akroselio is much weaker than Cres. Now, it is worth mentioning that if the streets are to be believed, we have another weapon on the horizon. We have the next build weapon on the horizon. Now, while Dengeki did hook us up with that just at the very end, the Q&A, where they just threw that information out there at the very, very end and said, hey, look, oh, they mentioned these units are upgradable. The weapon wasn't talked about. So I'm assuming this is our chase weapon for now. And then a new weapon is going to come out that'll likely either be slightly weaker or on par with, I'm guessing it's be slightly weaker than Cres. And then after its first upgrade, which will come likely a week or two after, it'll then be stronger than Cres. So like, if that matters that much to you, Cres is going to kill it for right now, absolutely crush it. I don't think that's going to be consistent for very long. Now, there is another possibility. There's another world to live in here in this situation. It's possible that Cres remains powerful and the build-up weapon eventually gets to the level of Cres. There's enough wiggle room as far as damage is concerned for them to do something like that, where it comes up by like a percentage every single time it upgrades, where Cres is the best weapon, but eventually that build-up weapon will reach Cres's level. But it also depends on what that weapon ends up having for its potentials. It depends on what synergies it actually has, because like I mentioned, while Cres has synergy with, high defensive builds to make sure that you maintain your buff uptime at all times, the new weapon might have something crazy like, who knows? Maybe it's got built-in crit rate. Oh, all of a sudden, crit damage became very useful. Maybe the new weapon has built-in crit damage. Oh, all of a sudden, Fixa Fatale crit rate just became a whole lot more useful because that crit damage could be massive. We don't know. So it depends on where you are in the situation. The one thing that is certain that we know for sure is the free weapon is garbage, dog water. It's so bad. At the very least, make yourself an Akroselio and slap some LC on it. You'll already be vastly superior to what anyone who isn't even trying is doing, and it wouldn't have even cost you anything because they were basically free to upgrade for a while now. So I would definitely recommend at the very least getting yourself an Akroselio. And if you're curious, is the Cres worth it? Cost-wise, yes. Technically speaking, as far as cost is concerned, the Cres is worth the amount of money you would spend on it. However, I don't believe it'll remain that way indefinitely. I believe that there's a good chance that we'll see the weapon blast past it, our ability to build up weapon, if they keep the same formula. We've also gotten so much of a buff with this weapon, it's also possible that they decide to go ahead and have this weapon be just as strong as our build-up weapon at the very end. But that's it. I've yapped on long enough. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic and I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, my friends. Peace out.